I am picking up on page 600 at the making of radical reconstruction because I can't remember where I stopped. I made myself a note, y'all. Look at that.
Do we actually stop?
No, I didn't. Just kidding. It's a note for something else. It's not for class. Okay. Yes. This is what I'm going to do. We're going to start here on page 600 at.
Where's the slideshow on LMS again?
Where is the slideshow on LMS? Under slideshows, probably.
It won't let me click on it.
There's resources on quarter 3, and then there's chapter 15 slideshow.
Thank y'all.
Oh, it's doing that to me too. It's all very slowly. No, I'm clicking it. It's just like.
Where do you see 50?
It's under. Okay, there's 1, and then you scroll.
I
There's
see
a 2.
it.
And I believe it is slide 25 that we're starting on.
It takes a long time to load.
I'm just shocked that they actually LMS is letting me upload them because there's a file size limit, which is stupid. And I'm always having to go through and delete pictures and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like the pictures are important.
That's why I like Discord because I can just kind of.
Makes me so
doing
mad.
it through my OneDrive.
Is that the thing
get rid
your mom
of
told
that
you we're not
problem?
allowed to use, Daniel?
Hmm?
Discord? Is not-
Yes. She told me she walked in my room and she was like, "You have Discord." I was like,
Hey, we're old. We don't know how things
No,
work.
She was like, "Don't get on it. There's sexual predators." And I was like, "Okay."
Oh my goodness! I told my mom.
Your mom loves you.
I told my mom I had Tumblr, and she just looked at me and was like, "I told you this 2 months ago as well." She forgets everything.
She's tired. Okay.
Mom can't remember anything.
So,
Checking out.
we're starting at the making of radical reconstruction. What were the sources, goals, and competing visions of Reconstruction? And I am on slide 26. So Andrew Johnson, as we have already established, is a terrible, terrible president. Usually historians who know more than I do, they do rank him as either the worst or very close to the bottom. He's...
Okay, there's a couple. We can put Nixon down there too.
Buchanan. Buchanan and Johnson kind of switch places as the worst president, depending on which historians are asked.
It should be. It's on the Johnson page. It's the one right.
It's slide 26.
Him or him.
Does anyone know anything about Andrew Johnson? Will someone please let Gia in the room? Thank you, Lauren.
He like a country boy.
That's what happens when you sit by the door.
In charge of Reconstruction. He was like kind of opposite of Lincoln.
What's his background, though? Let's talk about where he comes from.
Was he a Southern Democrat politician?
He was a Southern Democrat. How did he come into politics? There we are. I was gonna say power, but I'm like, no, he kind of accidentally fell into the presidency. How does he come into power?
Governor of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he moves up to.
Born in poverty in North Carolina, as a youth, Johnson worked as a tailor's apprentice. After moving to Tennessee, he achieved success through politics. Beginning as an alderman, he rose to serve in the state legislature, the U.S. Congress, and for 2 terms as governor of Tennessee. He was illiterate. He was never taught how to read.
He's using the common.
As a child. Yeah, as a child, his wife eventually, I think she teaches him to read maybe in his late teens, early 20s. He was a tailor. He really was if you want to think of it in our terms, he would be trailer trash against your aristocracy of the Southern planters.
He's using the Jackson method.
Yes, he's trying. Well, he identifies a lot with Andrew Jackson, even though Andrew Jackson was a planter.
Yeah.
He had the Hermitage, but sure.
So why was he so racist? Because wouldn't he have more sympathy if he came from a situation?
No, goodness no, because see, if I am equal to someone who used to be enslaved, that means that I'm at the bottom, right?
He has to be
I've
fair.
always got to find somebody that's worse than me.
But Lincoln like had sympathy because he was forced to work and he was poor. So.
I mean, I don't think he was quite there. Yeah,
But keep in mind too, I mean, we just have different people.
Yeah.
Some people are just that way.
There's half full and half empty.
Yeah. I mean, some people just are naturally inclined to need to find someone below them, where there are other people that don't care. I mean, some people are just like, okay, who it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, Johnson was one of those people. So as it says in 1864, before that, Lincoln actually named him governor of Tennessee because he was the only senator from a seceding state that stayed in D.C. when the Civil War happened. So everybody else went back to their states, and he was like, I'm not leaving. And I wish I could remember. I know there's a story about him staying, but I can't remember it all the way, so I'm not going to say it, but I'll look it up. Because I'd really like to talk smack about Johnson. Johnson insisted that since secession was illegal, the southern states had never actually left the Union or surrendered the right to govern their own affairs. It's so much circular logic. I love it. I love just, oh my.
Actually, they did nothing wrong.
Well, if we're going to say that they couldn't secede, they never did. So why are we taking their government away? The Republicans nominated him because they hoped that maybe it would pull in some people from the South. That was the stupidest hope ever.
I don't
Like,
think anyone liked him.
no one liked him. He was terrible.
It was like, well, no. Like,
He was awful. He was a huge states' rights defender. I mean, I say this, he was awful. He's exactly what you would have expected him to be.
Yeah.
A man elected from the state of Tennessee pre-Civil War. I mean, like, I'm talking about him because I personally disagree with his political views. But he's doing exactly what he was elected to do. He is who you would think he is. It's like he's not hiding.
Vice president.
He's not hiding who he is, ready to pull it out after he gets elected. You know, like that's why he was elected.
He just had a misfortune of being put as vice president.
So, right. So presidential Reconstruction starts in 1865 and goes to 1867. This is when it is still under Johnson's control because nobody knows what to do. They just know it has to be done. You know, Lincoln kind of had his...
it's kind of like the pandemic.
Right, it's very similar to the pandemic. People don't know what to do. They just know someone's got to do something. And so we're just going to throw whatever we got at the wall and see what sticks, what works, and then go from there. So he offers a pardon. Wait, hold on. I want to make sure I didn't skip something because this is one of my notes I made in the margin. Oh, yeah, this is exactly where I need to be. Okay, so he offers pardons, and these restore political and property rights to white Southerners who took an oath of allegiance to the Union, except, and the except is the big part, except Confederate leaders and planters whose pre-war property was valued over $20,000.
That doesn't last long.
Oh, no, it's okay. Because if you fell into one of those two categories, you had to go and personally ask him for a pardon. You had to make an appointment, and you had to go, President Johnson.
Why, if your land was over $20,000,
Why? Can anyone
He had
guess?
a lot of slaves, probably.
to bribe?
No, because you don't have any money now. Remember, all the white people, like, they put all their money into Confederate money, and that's as good as toilet paper. So why? Why would...
Social standing?
I mean,
Who was Johnson?
Oh, he was
he's
a...
real angry at the-
How was he born?
Poor.
Poor. He was an illegitimate child too. Like his mom may have been a prostitute. Like he was real low born.
he's like,
And you know, wouldn't it be really nice just to?
pettiness.
Yeah, it's great pettiness. I have to respect that from him because I would have done the same thing. I'm not even going to pretend. I would have been like, yes, you have to come and you have to ask me for a pardon.
So did the Southerners like him?
No,
No.
no one liked him.
Well, because he's his position, he's a Democrat.
Well, no,
Yeah, like no one liked him. He is elected out of what is now like one of those meth opioid parts of the country, like Tennessee, way far in the mountains. Because I looked it up one time because I am that crazy. And yeah, like the town that is named after him now in Tennessee is the like huge opioid problem. Lots of people dying from opioids. Like it's deep in the hills. So he's from an area that is not a place that has many planters. So these are people, like people like him that elect him. But yes, I would have done the exact same thing.
That's for Southern officers.
And if you were a planter,
Yeah.
like one of those people that snubbed him, you had to come and ask for a pardon. Yeah, I would have done it. So no judgment, Andrew Johnson. Judgment on other things that deserve judgment, but no judgment on that. Hold on. I skipped something. All right. So Johnson does end up like pardoning these people. They just had to come and ask him for it. So, yeah. He appoints provisional governors. He asks them to call state conventions. But these state conventions the representatives there are only elected by white people. And
Even like pretending to be like.
No, he's not tricking people. Like he is out and out saying, I want to do it like we had it before. Why? Why should we change it? So, I mean, at least you can respect that much. Like the fact that he is not hiding.
At least he's not pretending to be.
Yeah, he's not pretending to be like progressive or Republican. He's like, I don't know what you're thinking you're going to get out of me. This is what I want to do. The new state governments were required only to abolish slavery and so they had to abolish slavery. They had to say, we shouldn't have seceded. We were wrong. We're sorry. And they also had to say that they were not going to pay back any debts that they had incurred as Confederate states. Why?
Because that was all over Confederate money.
Because it wouldn't really be
Oh.
fair
Under
if
the
the nation
country.
had to pay for a rebellion against them.
Yeah, they're like, we're not paying for your rebellion. Because if they don't get rid of those debts, then they're absorbed into the Union. And the Union's like, we're not paying that. God, no. So at first, the people in the North are like, okay, let's see what happens here. Sure, why not? But then what happens is exactly what you would have thought happened. Your prominent Confederates are right back in office. Your old elite is back in power. And then we start having violence against the formerly enslaved. And that's when people start going, wait a minute, we don't like this. In my notes, I have shocking exclamation point written when it says that reports of violence directed against former slaves and northern visitors in the South alarmed Republicans. Oh my goodness, violence? No. One of the big things that really gets the North put out with Johnson's position are the black codes that get enacted in the South. Does anyone know what those are? You should.
Those when you can't, like, they get certain laws to protect them.
No, it was like restrictions.
Yeah, it's things, it's putting into law regulations to limit the rights and control the lives of black people.
The predecessors of the Jim Crow era.
Yeah, it's stopping them from being like full citizens.
Correct.
Yeah. Like it does some weird rights.
So,
but
yeah, I was going to say, it does give
anyways.
them the right to get married legally, to own property legally, and to have some interactions with the court system, but
That kind of already
But then
implied
you have to
with
have
the
like
other
2 or
stuff.
3 people to equal, like, or witness, like,
well, here's the things that they could not do. They could not testify against whites. They could not serve on juries. They could not serve in state militias. They could not vote. And the really huge, glaring problem is that if a black person was unable to produce a yearly contract saying that they had a job, then they could be arrested and have their labor hired out against their will.
Marriage, wait, you said the rights were marriage, court, and...
They could own certain property. They weren't allowed to own land, but they could own. At first, I made the same face as you, and then I was like, oh, yeah, just because you own property, like, this is property. This is property. While enslaved, your clothes were not your own. The cabin you lived in was not your own.
How are they expected to hold a job?
What?
You said they need to hold jobs, right? So
Yeah.
how can they hold a job without land to work on?
Well, you can go get a job. You can clean my house, it's fine.
Working
In
on.
the South, it was mostly like...
Yeah, no, they essentially forced them to keep working on the.
Yeah, like, I mean, this is all done for a reason. They thought out these consequences. So everything you're pointing out, they're like, yes.
That's exactly what
That's
they
how
That's what we wanted.
That's how they kept them.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to happen. We were so good that you saw that. I'm glad you agree with us. Like, that's exactly what they're saying here.
Wait, so would the planners basically be making? Well, I guess they wouldn't be making more money. I was saying that because then they wouldn't be paying for their food and stuff, but they're also not making as much profit off of them.
In what way?
Like if the free people still worked on their plantation,
Mhm.
like for a small amount of money,
Mhm.
would that still like be more profitable for the planter? Because then now they don't have to pay for their food. And
I don't know. I mean, I think it really just depends on commodities prices. So, like if one year corn is more expensive, then yeah, you might be making more. But then the next year, if it's really, really cheap, you might be losing. Like it's probably just dependent on that. I don't know. I'm sure if you try really, not actually that hard. I bet if you just do like a Google search, you could find someone who wrote a paper on it, and they have like charts and graphs, and I would die if I read it. In some states, judges were even allowed. So if you had a neighbor and your neighbor was like, okay, so Iris is not controlling her kids. I don't know what she thinks her kids are doing, but they're just standing around all the time, and she's a bad mom. So the court would go and take Iris's kids and apprentice them out to other people. Right? Like, that's fine. That's fine. Just the court coming in and taking your kids away from you.
Absolutely.
But that was what could happen, is if you were not, if someone complained about your parenting, basically, your kids could be hired out against your will.
I don't get how that works with parenting, but I get why they did it.
You just needed an excuse.
Yeah.
You just needed an excuse. I mean, they could find some kid like standing in the city, and they'd be like, hey, you're a vagrant. Come on. You're arrested. And they're like, what? I was waiting for my mom to come out of the general store. I don't know, something old-timey and stuff. But, like that's, you just need an excuse. It says in your textbook, clearly the death of slavery did not automatically mean the birth of freedom. That was reflected in the Frederick Douglass reading that we did. Let me see. A handful of Southern leaders were arrested, but most were quickly released. Only one was executed. Henry Wirtz, the commander of Andersonville Prison, where thousands of Union prisoners of war had died. Henry Wirtz is the only person executed for war crimes. And his were some bad war crimes, as war crimes tend to be.
Did Forrest die before this? Or did they just be like, hey, you're fine?
No, he lived on to found the KKK, Mary. Come on.
Forrest. We like
Adding
that.
to the fabric of America.
It was like that wasn't war crimes.
And that's what they're pointing out, is it's like, what? Like, this isn't how war works. Like, usually after a war, you gather up all the people that rebelled and execute them. But they were pardoned. It's okay. We'll just pretend it didn't happen.
Hey, look, there's Daddy Stephen on the next page.
That is kind of how like America does things.
We have very short attention spans.
Forget.
We do. We have very short attention spans. And I mean, that's actually a really good observation, Angela, going to what makes Americans Americans. You know, like here, no one wanted to do the messy business of finishing up a war, right? No one wanted to handle that. They didn't want to execute people. They didn't want to go through and help the formerly enslaved. They just wanted it to be over and done with, and we wanted to move on because we were exhausted. It's kind of like how a lot of people feel about the pandemic right now. Everyone is exhausted. We're exhausted of wearing masks. We're exhausted about hearing vaccines. We're just exhausted. And so now people are just like, can we pretend it's not happening? Well, is that a thing we can do? Is that an option, please? Because I'm so sick of it happening. And I mean, like, I'm right on board there. I'm like, I just want to pretend it's not going on because I'm tired. I'm so tired. I'm so tired of trying to do the right thing when no one knows what the right thing is. So this is how these people kind of feel. They're tired. They're hungry. They're sick of destruction. They're sick of death. They want to get this over with. And they're like, you know what? We don't want to kill anybody else. I don't care what they did. I'm tired of burying people. I'm tired of having to go and claim a body and then get it back and then dig a hole and put them in it. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of having to go through the funeral rites. I'm tired of having to wait for a preacher. I'm tired of death and destruction and everything. I want to go back to the way things were.
Yeah, but yeah, they arrested people and they just
Yeah.
at least in prison some of them.
It's like the back to normal thing.
Yeah, they wanted to skip the hard part and go back to normal.
And it caused a lot more problems much later down
It
the line.
does cause a lot of problems. And that's kind of America's jam.
It is.
We don't like doing the hard part.
Exist.
And so
What now?
It's like pretending your problems don't exist.
Yes.
Do that all the time.
I was going to say, I am not at all judging anyone because I do it a lot. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to tuck that away back in my mind, pretend it's not there.
Exactly. That's not.
See, if
Right,
I take
it's
it
not.
future
That's
me
way
later.
different.
That is future me's problem. And I can tell you, my past me is a terrible human being. Oh my God. She is lazy and doesn't want to do anything ever. And then I have to clean up all her messes. But yeah, I mean, that's it, is no one wants to do the hard part. So our radical Republicans, that's not a word. So in December of 1865, Johnson's like, we did it. We're done. We have loyal governments. The nation is reunited. End of
Within
list.
6 months.
End of job. I'm going to go have a whiskey. He was probably already drunk. She's like, yeah, we did it. Yay.
Yeah. It's just
But our radical oh my God, why do I keep saying this? Radical Republicans. Now I'm just going to say it because I can't stop, and there we are. Our radical Republicans caught it. They're like, Johnson, you're drunk and crazy. No. They were like, we have to make sure that these state governments don't include the very people that just took up arms against the government. What are you doing? We want to give the formerly enslaved men, not women, the right to vote. They were like, hey, look, this is an opportunity for us to like redo some stuff that we don't like, things that we need to fix, things that have been, standing out to a lot of people for a long time. Let's fix it. We have the opportunity. Let's do it. They like this expansion of the federal government. Yeah, it's really easy to like something that you won, like that you agree with. You're like, yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's easy when you like to do it.
Yeah, then the nuts.
yeah,
They don't like
it's
it,
going
and
it's
that's-
going to help them do what they want to do.
It is. It's definitely going to help them. Charles Sumner, the man who got beat with the cane, he's still hanging in there. Good for you, Mr. Sumner. And old Thad Stevens from Pennsylvania, he was So Stevens was in the House, he was a representative, and then Sumner was in the Senate. They're our most prominent radical Republicans. And Stevens, he's like, look, we're going to go in and we're going to confiscate the lands of disloyal planters and give them to the formerly enslaved and to any northern people who want to move down there and, like, you know, help build the South back, help make it like the North. Why do we not do that?
Mike started the Civil War again.
Oh, we don't care about that.
They don't care.
We won. They're almost all dead. Let's kill them all.
Is this like state rights, property rights?
Property rights.
Oh, property rights.
Americans do not like
Their property
taking
taken
property from people. They don't like it. It's like it's something
away. It burns
about
something deep inside
it
you.
does. Like
That's all.
it's just one of those things where people are like, you know what? I love all of this stuff, but no, we can't go that
Too
far. Because what happens when, after the Revolutionary War, when the people in Massachusetts are trying to claim Massachusetts farmers' farms for taxes?
Riots.
They rioted. They rebelled.
What was the whiskey?
That was, well, the Whiskey Rebellion was after that.
That was different. This was still.
What was Shakespeare about?
That, I couldn't remember the name. There's so much. But that's it, is we don't like that as Americans. So it doesn't matter how anti-planter, how anti-slavery, how much you want to punish the South, there's just something there that makes people go, we can't do that. That's not American. And it's not American, right? Like, we don't tend to enjoy having the government come in and take property, especially when it doesn't seem like it's for any reason. For these people, I understand, Angela, I get it. But for these people, they're like, but the formerly enslaved people didn't earn this land.
That's what they care about.
We like seeing people earn things. We don't want people just handed stuff.
Like, they
Because we worked
had
for it,
all their
right?
lives.
Like, I had to work for my stuff. What? They should still have to work for their stuff too. That's kind of what Americans
Yeah, but I like
overall
the-
have.
considering all the work.
Ideology.
I can't say that is. Like, I agree with you, you have to work for it, but they have nothing to work with is the problem.
And that is, again, yeah, that's kind of what a lot of people that were against not giving them the land, they were like, how are they supposed to work for something?
It's also
and the
how
other
they're
thing is
not
the
considering
plantation.
their slave labor as work. as
Well, of
job.
course not, Mary.
And the other thing is like the plantation owners, a lot of them were just wealthy because their parents were wealthy.
Yes,
They didn't earn that.
generational wealth.
It's not like they just came in and they were like, I'm gonna work and build my own plantation.
That's why they did. like,
But the people that
aristocracy.
did, you don't want to punish them for that, do you?
Well, that's not the part where they weren't the ones actually doing the work on it.
They may have started out that way. You never know. And you know, it's always that devil's advocate portion, that always the person that's like, well, you don't know that. Maybe they did. Maybe they started out and then they started with a little bit of land and they worked really hard and blah, 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 blah. You know, like, there's always that possibility. And there's just the innate way we think of the American way. We don't want to punish someone for that. We don't want that one person to lose their rights because they happen to be in this class. Yeah. I mean, it's neither good nor bad, it just is. So we don't get to our 40 acres and a mule in most places. I wrote in my notes, Johnson, December 1865. I did it. Reconstruction done. Get me a beer. I make myself laugh, because if you can't make yourself laugh, who can make you laugh? Other than, like, people falling down, because that's hysterical. I laugh at myself when I fall down because I'm like, you look like an idiot.
I was running and I fell. One was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." He's like, "Can I laugh now?"
Yes,
I was like,
always laugh. Like,
Just go.
I could break my leg and still be like, oh, that was hysterical. Ow. Okay.
Ours.
we have a mention here of the Homestead Act of 1862.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that was federal property.
Yeah, it was federal property. You're not taking property from private individuals.
It's like we took it from the Native
That's some
Americans.
lasting damage.
Yeah, and that's the only.
No, the best part is my mom came in the morning and she
Again,
goes,
they don't count as citizens.
Oh, you didn't even
They're
tell us
literally
that
not
happened?
citizens.
no, it happened like 3 in the morning.
They're not citizens until the 1930s.
What happened when she found out?
She's like,
1930s is when Native Americans are counted as citizens.
no, they said I fell off a bike and she's like, that doesn't happen from a bike. I'm like, okay.
All right, so Republicans at this point, they have an overwhelming majority in Congress. Because why?
They didn't allow any of the Southern
Because all
Democrats.
The South isn't, they're not allowed to have representatives right now. So, yeah. The party is still kind of divided in half. The radicals are like, this is garbage, Johnson. Your Reconstruction plan is terrible. Throw it out, take it away, let's do something better. And the other Republicans are like, now, hold on. He is president. Let's see if we can fix it. The moderates think that our Southern and even Northern whites are not going to accept expanding the vote to black people. They're like, they're not going to take, we can't force it down their throats. They're not going to accept it. But they do this fun little game where they refuse to seat the representatives. Once the South is allowed to elect them, they refuse to seat them. I love this part. This is the biggest.
Well, at least they're having
I mean, I love it because it reminds me something so much of high school where, like, you know, you have a fight with your friends and then everything's supposed to be okay, but then the next day in the cafeteria, you still can't sit with each other, and they're like, I don't even know why you're in here in the first place. I'm still mad at you.
Yeah, you just don't say them like you usually do.
You can't wear sweatpants. Yeah. They were doing that monologue for auditions, and no one, like, I don't think they understood the context. And I was like, yo, you're doing poor Gretchen Wiener's wrong. Hold on, let me see what I wanted to say here. All right, yeah, so they refused to seat these newly elected representatives from the South to Congress because they're all just the same people that were there before. And they're like, you rebelled. No, you don't get to come back. We have a bill that would expand the Freedmen's Bureau. In this, hold on, wait. I'm sorry, I skipped a sentence in my textbook. So it extends the amount of time it would be established. It extends, like, what they can do. Then we get the Civil Rights Bill. It says, in your textbook, it was described by one congressman as one of the most important bills ever presented to the House for its action. It said that all persons born in the U.S. were citizens. It guaranteed equity before the law. So black codes were not allowed. You couldn't do that. Everybody is represented equally.
What's that called?
The Civil Rights Act. No state is allowed to deprive any citizen of the right to make contracts, bring lawsuits, or enjoy equal protection of one's person, so yourself, or property. And this is all on page 603. But there's one thing that's left out.
The right to vote.
Voting. That's not mentioned. But it's important because it's in this legislation where we actually have some kind of definition of what citizenship is.
I do like the next one where they're like, Congress shocked. Johnson doesn't like rights for.
Right, like if they were like, Congress was so surprised he didn't sign it. Really? No one else was. No one else was surprised. Everybody else was like, yep, that sounds right. Sure.
So were they kind of like in the first like women's suffrage, well not women's suffrage, the women's rights movement meeting? They're like, we can't do suffrage because that's like too radical.
Mhm. Well, I don't know. I don't know what their probably similar rationale in that, you know, we can include it because
It would be so.
they're not like the white people everywhere just won't accept it. So let's not talk about that right now. We'll just get this in place, get him to sign it, and then we'll talk. Yeah. Johnson vetoes both bills, shockingly, to them, not to anyone else. He says that he is defending states' rights, and he's like, black people don't deserve citizenship.
It's like discriminating against the white race.
Yes, that's what he said.
I was like, I love this logic.
Put state rights into racism.
What then happens? What can Congress do?
They can try to overturn the veto again.
They can overturn the veto. There is there is language in place in the Constitution that says that if the president vetoes something and Congress still wants to do it, they can override the presidential veto with a certain percentage. I believe it's 2/3.
Yes.
I thought so. Usually it's 2/3. I don't know why that's like always in
People
the
like
Constitution.
This is more than half.
It's more than half, yeah.
I was gonna say, it used to be like almost everyone had to sign
Mm-hmm.
on,
But then that just stopped happening.
It's impossible. You can't do that.
Yeah.
It's like when we were in elementary school, we'd be like, okay, everyone has to be on the game, we're going to class. And then we just stood there for like the entire recess.
Yes.
And that was just
Yeah, because there's
Um,
one person who didn't want to play.
The Civil Rights Bill is the first major law in our history to be passed over the presidential veto. So, huge law, very important, and it was vetoed, and then they went, no. You're stupid, Johnson.
Did he ever like try and change the law and be like, you can't do that?
I mean, it's the Constitution.
Oh, okay.
You can't really do much about that unless you want to have a constitutional amendment, and they had already just done so many.
Why have another?
How is this enforced?
What?
The Civil Rights Act.
I believe, I don't think it says in the book. No, it doesn't. I believe that all right, so I'm just talking off of what I'm thinking I can remember. I think this is what authorized some federal marshals to move in. I might be thinking about later legislation, though. Because I know at some point after voting is passed, I'm thinking of later legislation. I'm not really sure. I'll look it up. I'll look it up. Okay, 14th Amendment.
Yeah, that should be the Reconstruction Act because that was the military.
Yeah, the Military Reconstruction Act.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I think that one is it. Because there is something about,
Makes sense for a military district.
yeah, and there is something in there about voting. I know. All right, so June of 1866, I think. Yeah, 1866. Maybe? Sure, we'll say 1866. It doesn't matter. Numbers are irrelevant. The 14th Amendment is put into the Constitution. All persons born in the United States, you're citizens. End of story. Yes, it is. Hush. There's a joke in Family Guy where they're going on like a German tour, and somebody goes, excuse me, why don't we have anything in here about like the 1930s or 40s? And the tour guide goes, no, nothing happened. We were all on vacation. That's kind of like what they're doing here. It's like, no, we weren't. There was no, I don't know what you're talking about. There's no war. We were on vacation. It's fine.
So, wait, 14th Amendment guaranteed citizenship.
Birthright citizenship, and prohibits the states from doing anything that would keep everybody from being protected equally under the law. So this is the Equal Protection Clause. Equal protection under the law. And now that it's in the Constitution, what does that mean?
It's
You
a
can't
lot
take it back.
harder to change.
It's harder to change.
And the states can't do anything.
The states can't do anything about it because it's federal law. So the feds can come in and enforce it. It's like if you don't like it, that's fine, but I can send in federal troops and make you do it.
So was the whole thing with like if a state deems something unconstitutional, they don't have to follow it. That was out of the picture now.
It had always been out of the picture. Nullification, like no one ever accepted it as valid except for John C. Calhoun and all the Southerners.
Okay.
And all those people kicking them out of, they won't sit them in Congress, so good luck. It says that in a compromise between the radical and moderate positions on black suffrage, the amendment did not grant blacks the right to vote, but it did provide that if a state denied the vote to any group of men, that state's representation in Congress would be reduced. So basically, if you won't let them vote, we're not counting them towards your seats in Congress.
They're not getting the 2/3 thing.
3/5.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
They're numbers, who cares? But keep in mind that that's not what happened with non-voting women. Yay, we still don't count. It says that the 14th Amendment helped kind of fissure any kind of like good feelings that the two parties were kind of working to get back. The 14th Amendment was like, nope, not doing that anymore. No Democrats voted for it. 4 out of the 175 Republicans actually opposed it.
I can just read Stephen's little interview, like an office interview there.
Radicals, to be sure, expressed their disappointment that the amendment did not guarantee black suffrage. It was far from perfect, Stevens told the House, but he intended to vote for it because I live among men and not among angels. It's very much on the Benjamin Franklin line, right? Like after, when he was telling people to adopt the Constitution, he's like, look, it's not perfect, but it's better than what we've got. Now we're moving into the Reconstruction Act. I know this is a lot, but oh well, we don't have a lot of time. So 1866, our elections revolve around the 14th Amendment. Johnson, on purpose, makes this an issue of the election. He's like, if you don't like the 14th Amendment, vote for me. Everybody was like,
That work. That seems like something people would do.
Yeah, did not work still.
That was like the entire president or something. You don't like that. Vote for me.
yeah, well, he's not up for re-election at this point.
No.
But there's midterms. This is midterm elections. And so he's like, vote for people who like me.
Did not work.
No.
Everyone's like, we don't like you.
Yeah, I was supposed to say, well, he says vote for people who like me.
It's like, but we don't like you, so why would we do that?
Denouncing his critics, the president made wild accusations that the radicals were plotting to assassinate him.
Oh, Johnson.
His behavior further undermined public support for his policies, as did riots that broke out in Memphis and New Orleans, in which white policemen and citizens killed dozens of black people.
He should have been like up for president in 2010s and 20s.
But see, like, that's why, like, everything that has been going on in the last few years politically, I'm like, this isn't new. This hasn't happened before.
What Johnson
I mean,
does.
this sounds like so much like Trump. Like,
That there are people that compare the two presidencies.
but it's just like.
I've also seen some comparisons between President Trump and, oh my goodness, who was it? Jackson. They like to compare him to Andrew Johnson and Andrew Jackson. Yeah. Those are two of the presidents that people like to kind of be like, look, and then it's like, oh, okay, they're still different people.
But it's like,
I know, but I was
like
just
that
like,
kind of
that's
a
Mhm.
American identity feel.
That's like exactly what he says. He's like, I'm the most hated president ever. And it's like, Lincoln was shot.
Where am I?
He's like,
But that was one person.
Talking to a blind
Yeah, I feel like if someone kills you in office, you at least get to supersede anyone else.
Yeah.
All the people that were assassinated, they get that award. Okay, they get to go at the very top of the most hated people in office, and then everyone else can start filing
But then
in.
again, a lot of the assassinations were just like a couple of people who didn't hate them.
True.
But I feel like other than that, Kennedy.
But they really hated him.
Like,
I mean, they hated him enough to kill him. So
yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say, I feel like that's just like, it's like more dislike points, like if everyone had to get their fair amount of points,
Yeah.
it's like,
It's like Mario Party. Like everyone has coins, but they get stars.
okay, so
it's like how your parents vote.
to show how much people did not like Johnson, they voted for all the Republicans that didn't agree with him.
He really did a wrong turn there.
Even though the president, nonetheless, at the president's urging, every southern state but Tennessee refused to ratify the 14th Amendment. So Tennessee went with Johnson. Shocked, actually. Like, I'm not even saying that sarcastically. Like, I really am shocked that Tennessee stayed on board with him. But Tennessee, too, it also had more union in there for a little bit longer. And they had some more pockets of union support, I would guess.
Somehow Tennessee's that union place.
And your moderate Republicans, like the fact that your southern states aren't adopting this, they were like, fine.
I guess we're radical now.
Yeah, they're the ones that were like, you know what? We tried to make this easy.
Oh well.
We tried to give you the grape flavored medicine. But because you threw it up, now you have to take the yucky kind.
Yeah, they have to take the.
Tamiflu.
Yeah, they take the yellow flu.
Oh.
That stuff is so
No,
disgusting.
Thermoflu is the grossest because it's that tea.
Well, if was it Mucinex touches your tongue and your saliva begins to melt? That's
No, that's you gotta
Yeah,
take. You gotta
no,
take the
I
Mucinex.
was gonna give you
pills,
pills.
and you
Can
have to
you
do
take the
that.
liquid medicine
really
that's
bad.
flavored?
No, the pills that like dissolve in your mouth, what are the ones that make you throw up like every time?
Yeah, the